Call the honourable member for Higgins.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to honour and congratulate the recipients of the Queen's Birthday Honours for 2021. Mr Deputy Speaker, in Higgins this year I'm delighted to congratulate the 35 recipients of a Queen's Birthday Honour, including 14 medals of the Order of Australia, 15 members of the Order of Australia and 6 officers of the Order of Australia. These recipients have contributed significantly both to their community and to our country. Every year is a long list in Higgins, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'd particularly like to congratulate Professor Stephen Davis on his AO for his distinguished service to medical education, to stroke research and to the management of cerebrovascular disease. Ms Erica Feller AO for distinguished service to the international community, to the recognition and protection of human rights and to refugee law. Mr Ian Hicks AO for distinguished service to the community through philanthropic support for the arts, education and social welfare bodies. Ms Janine Kirk AO for distinguished service to the community through leadership and advisory roles in not-for-profit organisations. Emeritus Professor Lester Peters AO for distinguished services to medicine, particularly to radiation oncology and to professional medical groups. And Emeritus Professor Alan Trounson AO for distinguished service to medical science and to in vitro fertilisation and stem cell technologies. I'm pleased to say that I called Alan a colleague in my former working life, and he's done some amazing work over the last many decades to help families start when they've had difficulties with infertility. Mr Deputy Speaker, it's wonderful to see the rich and diverse tapestry of Higgins well represented in this year's Queen's Birthday Honours. Higgins constituents honoured with an AM truly come from all walks of life, from child protection presented to Mr Andrew Blode, AM, to interior design for Ms Susan Carr, AM, performing arts for Mr Colin Cornish, AM, and Ms Rose Downer, AM, to industrial relations for Mr Michael Gay, AM, and education to children with special needs for Mr Anthony Thomas, AM. Urban planning also gets a mention, the award being presented to Ms Catherine Mitchell, AM, as does building and construction for Mr Valence Simmons, AM. Constituent Mr Trent Smith, AM, was honoured for service to motorsport, Ms Ricky Swart, AM, for service to the media and film industry, Mr Charles Justin, AM, for his work for museums, and Mrs Louise Goulet, AM, for her charity work. She's worked diligently to support the Potter Foundation and my old alma mater, Melbourne Girls Grammar, where she was a substantial supporter of the new Artemis Centre. She was indeed a school swimming captain, and I know she was very delighted by the opening of this new building. Mr Deputy Speaker, there's one thing we can count on in Higgins. It's over-representation in the medical and healthcare field. And I'd like to congratulate Ms Helen Maxwell Wright, AM, for her recognition for diabetes research and child welfare, Mr Brian Mendelsohn, AM, for plastic surgery, and Dr Heather Mack, AM, for ophthalmology. I'd also like to thank Mrs Yen Bui, OAM, for her service to the Vietnamese community in Higgins and indeed right across Victoria. Mrs Bui is always so enthusiastic in her dedication to serve and help people. In fact, I've danced with Yen at Vietnamese Lunar New Year celebrations held in Ashburton. She's a great enthusiast for her culture and her community, and I really have loved working alongside her. Mr Deputy Speaker, whilst my electorate always features in the Queen's Birthday Honours Awards, not all of the action, of course, happens in Higgins, and I would like to make special mention of 2 extra people who live just outside of Higgins. That includes Professor John Daly, who is presented with an AM for significant service to public policy development and to the community. Professor John Daly was the inaugural director of the Grattan Institute, and he has given a decade of his life to the intellectual leadership of this country. Congratulations for the recognition of that extraordinary work. I also recently met with Marie McCabe, now Marie McCabe AM, the CEO of Dementia Australia. I'd like to take a moment to congratulate her on her award for significant service to people living with Alzheimer's and dementia and to the aged care sector. Her work in this space hits home to many who all too well know the pain of watching relatives suffering from this awful disease, as did my father. Mr Deputy Speaker, I commend all of the Higgins residents and indeed all Australians represented in the Queen's Birthday Honours this year. It reflects a lifetime of service of these many great people to our great country. I ask that the following list of recipients be tabled in Hansard, because I'd like to put on the record the wonderful work they have done for my community and indeed for all of Australia. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.